Community Consolidated School District 50 for November 17th, 2022. The meeting will now come to order. Roll call, please.
Carla,
Here.
Liz Joe,
Yeah, I'm here.
Lizzie,
Here.
Renee,
Here.
Corey,
Here.
Anna, here, Brianna,
Here.
we have quorum.
Great. Sorry about that. I was on the wrong part of the agenda. So, next up, we have the opening ceremony, Pledge of Allegiance, and it will be led by our District 50 veterans.
Ms. Amon and Dr. Kiefer? All right. Surprise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote?
Joe,
Yes.
Lizzie,
Yes.
Renee,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Anna,
Yes.
Brianna,
Yes.
Carla,
Aye.
motion carries 7-0.
Okay, thank you. So we'll start off then with our tax levy hearing.
This should be good.
Let the record reflect that this is the tax levy hearing conducted by the Board of Education of Woodland Community Consolidated School District Number 50, Lake County. For the record, the board approved the preparation of the tax levy in tentative form on October 27th, 2022. On November 4th, 2022, notice was published in the Daily Herald of tonight's public hearing. At this time, does the administration wish to make any comments?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'll turn it over to Chris Bobek for comments,
We have a presentation,
and I'll move out of the way.
presentation for the board and also for the general public. And we've seen a lot of these slides before because we go through this a couple of times, but this is the official levy hearing for 2022. On the 27th, we did go through. We did talk about the estimate. You did certify the notice that went in into the Daily Herald, which was required. We're having the hearing tonight, and then sometime in late March, early April, we'll actually find out what that means when the county gets back to us. And they finalized all of their EAV, and they finalized all of the new construction, and they've given us what the actual levy is going to be for the following year. And then we have to turn around and we have to certify that with the county clerk. What is the levy? For all of you that have heard this a lot of times, there's two portions of it. There's the operating levy. That's the levy that's capped and is under the property tax extension limitation law. That is the piece of the levy that funds basically our daily operations, our salaries, our benefits, any purchase services, supplies, all of that good stuff. And then there's the bond and interest extension, and that is something that's already predetermined and preset when we borrow monies. We give the county clerk, after we borrow monies, the information, and then they, on our behalf, will go ahead and do the levy request and take care of that and send that out to the taxpayers. That is not covered under the property tax extension limitation law, so if our operating levy goes up by 2% and bond and interest payments go up by 50%, you can go over that 5% limit because that is not under PTEL. So what do we know? We know CPI was 7%. We know that's 2% above what the cap on PTEL was. What do we not know? We do not know the estimated equalized assessed value. We have an idea of what it's going to be, but we don't know officially what it's going to be until March or April. We're estimating growth at 7.04%. We're estimating new construction coming in at about $6.4 million. That's about $4 million less than last year. And then we have to follow the PTEL calculations. So the one piece is CPI, and the government's They try to keep CPI fairly flat and at a reasonable rate. You can see when you look at the little graph in the lower right-hand corner, it doesn't necessarily always pan out that way. Obviously, with the largest spike we've seen since PTEL was initiated happening last year. We've had averages of 2.32 since 2003, 2.15 since 2013. 7% is big. And the way that we actually record the levy, technically the levy is supposed to be recorded as the money's coming in June. It's supposed to be recorded for next year. That's how it's set up. Most of the school districts, once they receive the money, they record the money. It's more of a cash basis. Here is our EAV. You've got all of the knowns except for that far right bar coming in at 1.8. We were up past 2 million or 2 billion in EAV, and then we had the big dip. We had the housing crisis, all of that good stuff. We're still building our way back up there. We're at 1.8. 7% growth is good growth. 6.4 million in new construction, not bad. We probably average a little bit more than that, but it's not too bad. Your formula, you take the last year's extension, you multiply it by 1 plus CPI, you divide it by your EAV, you take out the new construction, and you come up with your limiting rate. So we know our prior year's extension. Oops. Oh, that jumped far. That jumped far again. Prior year's extension, we know what CPI is. We can't use 7%. We have to use 5% because that's what the cap is. Then we have our estimates, our EAV, our new construction. We come up with our limiting rate of just below 4%, which gives us an estimate of what we believe we can collect. And then on top of that, we have our CEDAL IMRF, which we're part of, obviously, the Special Education District of Lake County. So each member has a portion of IMRF that they levy on behalf of CEDAL. And then we also have our debt payments. And this year it's actually a little bit less than the previous year. You put it all into the formula, and then you make your request. So when you look at these, I know it's kind of hard to see. Here's our prior year extension. These are the maximum rates that we can use in each of the funds. They actually got rid of the educational one not too long ago, which is very nice. And then we have our request. And our request is usually more than we think we're going to get because we don't know what our estimated EAV is, or what our actual EAV is, and we don't know what our actual new construction is. Anything can come on the books late, and that could have impact what you're able to collect and what you're able to levy for. So you levy above what you believe you're going to get just because you don't want to miss out on the things that you can get. I always say there's no penalty for over-levying. There is a penalty for under-levying, and it's a permanent penalty that perpetuates and goes in. Every year you will miss out on dollars. So at 5%, you know, what we're looking under our operating levy, we're looking at levying at 7.83%. What we believe we're going to get when you add in the new construction, you'll have the 5% plus an extra 0.35% for new construction. So we're going to request 75.55 in the operating. We think we're going to get 73.8. And then you're going to have to add in your bond and interest. Total tax extensions, what we put in the paper, and you'll see that in one of the next slides, 79.878 and 78.142 is what we really believe we're going to get, which is just under 5%, just because the bonds are coming in, or the principal and interest payments are going to be less than they were in the previous year. This is the notice. If you happen to catch it in the paper on the 4th, this is required this year. We didn't have to do it in any of the other years since 1992. Once PTEL was enacted, this is the first year that we've been required to do it. We do it just for transparency purposes. We like to be transparent. We'll put this slide up every year. This is brand new. Last time I only showed you what our cash balances were at the end of June, end of the last fiscal year. There's still some interpretation of the new Public Act, which changed the school code. Nobody's exactly sure what they want to have in there, so what we put in this slide just to cover all of our bases is here's the fund balance that we had at the end of last year, $85.5 million. I put in what our expected extension is going to be, the $78 million. I put in what our expenditures are going to be, which is just over $100 million. And then I also put in our cash balance as of October, and our cash balance went up from 85 to 106, and that's because you get your levy in large chunks. You get it a large chunk in June, and then you'll get it also in August, September, and October. So your fund balance typically spikes way up, and then it starts to come down, then it spikes up again, and then by the time you reach May, it's way back down to where it is kind of towards the low of the year. Our estimated cash at the end of the year is going to go down by $4.2 million. A lot of that is due to the capital projects. How we compare with districts around us, you've got your Oak Groves and Libertyvilles that are closer to 3%. Lake Villas at 4%. We're at 4.33, not terrible. Compared to some of the other surrounding districts, 4.5, 4.6s, you even get up into the 5s, and then Milburn is at 7%. So the tax rate is favorable compared to several of the districts that surround us. We actually are expecting it's going to go down as well. When you put everything together, I always like to put in a slide, well, what does this mean? What does it mean for the taxpayer? Well, we took home values from $250,000 to $350,000. We did the equalized assessed value. I didn't take out any of the exemptions. I just did a straight off of just the home values and the estimates. So for our capped extension, if you're at a home value of, we'll just say $300,000, you're looking at a property tax increase of $190. You can take out $2.61 for an overall increase of $187.58. Remember, this is the largest increase we've seen in quite some time. And you also have to remember that if you look at this and say, well, my property taxes went up, well, they went down by $100, then they went up by $300. This is based off of if everybody's property values go up at the exact same rate or go down at the exact same rate. Properties tend to go, you tend to have certain areas that go up higher and quicker than other areas, and some areas will even go down. So this is just an overall average and what we can expect, everything held in a vacuum. So to make that quick and painless, the next slide is questions.
Any questions from the board? Any questions from the audience? Okay. I have to get to my notes, sorry. If there's no questions from the board or from the audience, then I will ask for a motion. I'm asking for a motion to adjourn the public hearing on the tax levy.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Lizzie,
Yes.
Renee. Yes. Corey,
Yes.
Anna. Yes. Brianna,
Yes.
Carla,
Aye.
Joe.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Great job. Next up, we have the superintendent's report by Dr. Maychek, and he's there and ready.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So, kind of as very appropriately, when I met with Dr. Little to work on this agenda, and I said, you know, this is National School Board Members Day, and then she said, oh, you guys don't do anything for us. We don't need anything. And of course, you know, you do, because the role that you play in setting the vision and the course for this district, and the amount of volunteer hours that you all put in, and how thoughtfully you approach your work, I'm very grateful to you. And so we just have a couple of things that we wanted to share with you to show our appreciation. The first one was a district resolution, and this is one of the few resolutions that the board does not sign, but that I would like to share with you. Whereas school board members are elected to sit in trust for their diverse communities, and in that capacity are charged with meeting the community's expectations and aspirations for the public education of their children, and whereas school board members are entrusted with the guardianship and wise expenditure of scarce tax dollars and are responsible for maintaining and preserving the buildings, grounds, and other areas of the school district that the community has put in their trust, and whereas school board members are responsible for providing leadership that ensures a clear, shared vision of public education for their schools that sets high standards for the education of all students and requires the effective and efficient operation of their district, and whereas school board members adopt the public policy to give voice to that leadership and are also responsible for the regular monitoring of the district's performance and compliance with state policy, and whereas school board members selflessly volunteer countless hours to public service without compensation through sacrifice of time from their families or employers, and whereas school districts have faced enormous challenges during the COVID-19 pandemic, and the strong, dedicated leadership provided by the Woodland Community Consolidated School District 50 Board of Education provided successful teaching and learning to continue during that time. And whereas Woodland Community Consolidated School District 50 recognizes the great responsibility and challenges placed before the elected citizens who serve as its school board members, and is dedicated to providing support and building a strong partnership that will help the board better serve the needs of this district and the Woodland Community Consolidated School District 50 community they represent, and therefore be it resolved by Woodland Community Consolidated School District number 50 that we proclaim November 15th, 2022 as School Board Members' Day as a way to honor those citizens who devote their time and energy for the successful education of our children and our future leaders. I urge all citizens to join me in recognizing the dedication and hard work of these school board members and in working together to mold and the education system that meets the needs of our community. So thank you all very much for what you do.
Thank you.
And representing our students and staff, I want to ask Tim to come up, and Tiffany Drake.
So, we would like to thank all of you for your efforts and all that you do for us. Our students, intermediate and middle, put together a package for you. And so we are going to, our students, so we're going to go ahead and give these to you.
The tickets for the limo ride are in there.
So,
Thank you so much.
a combined effort here. So the middle school students, the sculpture club created a gift for you all, and then the intermediate students created the artwork and thank you cards for all of you. So why don't you open it up so that you can see? Isn't that very impressive? I am impressed. What?
There's a frog in it.
Look at and the frog is inside. Yes.
There's a W on the bottom.
So from some very our students are very talented.
There's a frog in the bottom.
Yeah, the frog is at the bottom. That is yes.
I'm loving the frog, by the way.
So thank you for all that you do. And our students obviously are appreciative of all of the things that you guys do. But here's just a little token, but also to keep thinking about all of the decisions that you make. It's obviously for the students, but here, just keep remembering the little frog that's in the inside of you, right? But that's truly the work that the kids truly, sculpture club and, the artwork that they're doing. And, it's truly about the students and the decisions that you make. It's truly about our kids. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. What club was it? Was it Sculpture Club? Middle school? That's really impressive. That's really cool. This is awesome.
Well, that was very nice. Appreciate it.
Oh, we also have the choir did a little.
Thank you, school board, for all you do.
Wait, so how? Where's yours?
Thank you. Thank you again. Next up, we have the elementary school Veterans Day fundraiser. Change for change. Change for change. Okay.
Yes, I want to introduce, Ryan Wolberg and Kyle Lees, who worked on a fundraiser. They had a Spirit Week culminating in a donation to the Lake County Honor Flight Program, and it was tied into Veterans Day, and so we invited them to share a little bit about what the program was and what you guys did.
Well, good evening, and thank you, Dr. Maychek and Dr. Little, Board of Education, for allowing us the opportunity to speak with you this evening on our what was happening for our Veterans Day at elementary. So we'll pull up our presentation here. Yep, there's a short presentation here. While we're waiting, so I can explain a little bit about it. And we were in a PTA meeting today, and I know one of our board members got to listen in. And Dr. Maychek, I want to echo his words. It is amazing to work in a school district that chooses to have our students in session on Veterans Day, because I think a lot of our students that experience that understanding of why we celebrate that holiday, and hearing from my colleagues at primary, at intermediate, at middle, and us at elementary, we all do something special for Veterans Day in order to honor our veterans and to incorporate our families within the festivities. So although I'm going to be sharing with you today about what we did at elementary, I do need to applaud the efforts of everybody across the district and the amazing work that they do. So as Dr. Maychek stated here, I'll just start here while the presentation is loading. So this planning started, and I asked Mr. Lees to join us. He's one of our PE teachers, but also one of our school improvement leaders, community outreach and inclusion school leaders. And that's new this year because I think we've talked about it a few times. Elementary is now elementary and not east and west, so we're trying to find ways to really build that brand of elementary. What is elementary? And doing something new as we're continuing to work through the year. And so we started talking back in September about what are we going to do for Veterans Day and how can we incorporate everyone, inviting our families in because we're excited to welcome in the community, as well as do a fundraising efforts for things that we've done in the past and respect those past events that we've done. So Dr. Maychek mentioned we did a fundraiser for Lake County Honor Flight, which is a wonderful organization. I know Dr. Maychek, I've talked to him a couple different times about it. It just how great of an organization is where they obviously are able to send veterans. It's a long day. I think it starts at approximately 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, but they fly veterans from the area out to Washington, D.C., and then they obviously fly them back that day, so they're able to go and see the memorials. There's going to be a picture here from our presentation. Mr. Block and myself, Kyle Block, our associate principal, we were in Washington, D.C. At the end of October for we were provided the opportunity to speak at a ASCD conference. And with it, we went out as we were coming back. And with the World War II, there we go, Laura. If we can just go to the third slide there. Please. There we go. And we were able to go and actually see there was a wreath, and I'll show you here in a minute. To actually, we took a picture with it, shared it with our students. So just to build a little pomp behind it. There we are, looking very official. Look at that. But that's at the World War II, and as you can see, it's the Lake County Honor Flight. So they were there in previous weeks. If you can go back one slide too, Laura. Thank you. So feedback from past years, so I included in there the honor flight of Lake County and what it is, what I just explained, but feedback from past years. And I do want to read this because I think it's very important to see how our students and the incredible generosity of our students is actually, it makes a difference. So thank you again for inspiring events celebrating our veterans. I continue to receive emails and phone calls from veterans and HFC volunteers that had the honor of attending. All were moved and inspired by their participation and particularly by the commitment and respect of your students. In speaking to our few HFC veterans, I now realize that the interaction with students was incredibly impactful to them. In these interesting times, one voiced a restored faith in the younger generations. Every time I read that, I get a smile across my face. It's showing us what our students, how they're affecting change, not just change for change, but change in other people's lives as well. And through this incredible Spirit Week, and Mr. Lees gets to do the fun part and show how much fun we had. We were able to raise a whole lot of money, and he's going to be able to share that total with you here momentarily. So the planning, as I said, we did the fundraiser, and then we actually had the day where we were able to invite everyone in, and we're just going to share some pictures of the days and what it looked like. So, Mr. Lees.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan. So on the week of Veterans Day, we had a Change for Change event. The The kids had a lot of fun. We incorporated a spirit week in it. So if you take a look up on the presentation, every day of the week was the kids brought in a different coin. Starting on Monday, it was Pajama Penny Day, so the kids would wear their pajamas to school, and then all the kids would bring in a penny. We didn't have school on Tuesday, but on Wednesday was Neon Nickel Day. The kids wore something bright to school, and then Thursday was Dazzling Dime Day, wear something shiny or something that makes you unique to school. You can see Mr. Warburg in there.
I need to interrupt. I had to put this picture in here for Dr. Maychek. So he came by. This was on Thursday, and we had a representative from the Regional Office of Education. That was there as well. That's my Dazzling Dime shirt. I have that shirt. It's hanging behind my door. I'm an elementary principal. You got to have fun too, right? But that's my shirt for it, and I felt very dazzling and very out of place standing next to everybody in my Dazzling Dimes. But the kids loved it, and really nobody seemed too shocked I was wearing it either. So
look good. Yes, that was Thursday, and then we finished up on Friday with our Crazy Quarters Day, a mismatch day. So it was really cool. I also have to give a shout out to Maddie Rose in that picture on the left when Clifford had. She was a great help with this event. She helped me organize it. And then as a school together, we actually raised over $1,800 worth of coins for the whole school, which is awesome. So that's going to be able to. So it was a great event. And then we finished up on Friday. We had on Veterans Day, we had 25 veterans come in throughout the school day. They came in during PE class because all of our students have PE every day. It was an easy way to schedule it. But the veterans came in during PE, and they were able to talk to the students, interact with the students. You can see some pictures up here of the kids interacting, asking lots of fun questions. I know the couple of veterans at the end of the day told me how cool it was that the questions that the kids asked the veterans were just kind of. It was just a lot of fun. There's a lot of funny questions, like where do you guys live? Or where do you guys go to eat? It was just, kind of just put a different perspective on it for them. So it was really cool. Here's a list of the veterans, the 25 veterans that came in. We decorated the hallway when they came in. One of our PE teachers, Ashley Campbell, spent a couple hours making that balloon arch for it and everything. So it was a great team effort, and it was all in all a great day.
Yeah, and one of the things, too, I also wanted to mention, one of the previous pictures, it's really interesting to see. So we're collecting change all week in pennies, quarters, dimes, nickels, and how our teachers and our staff used it and incorporated it into their lessons as well. So, it's fun to the value of money, but also counting, using it for estimation. We filled up 2 fairly large water bottle containers that I know Mr. Block's got pictures of it, and we were talking about estimation activities with it. So just all in all, just a fun way of celebrating our veterans and thanking them for their service. And I think I give many thanks to our staff who went above and beyond and did a great job planning the event. And just wanted to thank the board once again for your help and your support in allowing us these types of opportunities, and looking forward to continuing to celebrate them in coming years. So thank you.
Great job.
Thank you, guys.
Next up, we have citizen statements. Is there anyone signed up? No? Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second?
Discussion? Roll call vote.
Renee? Corey?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
Brianna?
Yes.
Carla?
Aye.
Joe?
Yes.
Lizzie?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay, thank you. The first item, action item we have is the approval of the 2022 tax levy. There are 6 motions that we must approve. May I have a motion to recommend these resolutions and certificates to be approved for 2022? 2022 tax levy resolution and certificate of tax levy for the year 2022, resolution to levy 2022 taxes for certain purposes, resolution to levy certain special education taxes for special education district IMRF purposes, and approval of the certification of compliance with the truth in taxation laws.
So moved.
Second.
Got a first and a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing no discussion, roll call vote.
I'm sorry, who was the first and second?
Joe.
Corey.
Yes.
Anna? Yes. Brianna?
Yes.
Carla?
Aye.
Joe?
Yes.
Lizzie?
Yes.
Renee? Yes. Motion carries 7-0.
And Lizzie will read the title of the resolution.
The resolution authorizing a supplemental levy to pay the principal of and interest on outstanding limited bonds of Community Consolidated School District 50, Lake County, Illinois.
Okay, thank you. Action item is approval of relocation intergovernment agreements. That was discussed in closed session or presented in closed session. Can I get a motion to approve the relocation intergovernmental agreements as presented?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Anna? Yes. Brianna?
Yes.
Carla?
Aye.
Joe?
Yes.
Lizzie?
Yes.
Renee? Corey?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay. We'll move on to reports and discussions. First up, we have a written report and presentation on the annual HR report. Will be given by Martha Gutierrez, Executive Director of Human Resources. And I think this was put off from last month, so it's on the agenda again for this month. So go ahead, Martha. Do you have a presentation?
I do.
Okay.
You want to just slide
I just want to say, I didn't come with a resolution or gift, but I recognize you guys on Twitter. No one told me they were coming with gifts. Okay, so really quick, you have your HR report, but I'm just going to recap quickly what's already in your report, some of the highlights. So just I'm going to go through all this data with you so that you can get an idea visually of our staff data, recruitment data, what we're going to be doing moving forward next year. So here's our staff data in terms of our certified staff education. So if you can see, our staff has like 60.8% have higher than a master's. Last year it was at 58.2. So all our staff moved up in terms of their credentials, or as far as education goes. Years of service. This shows number of staff or percentage of staff. Again, it went up from last year. Well, except for the 49.7 because we had a lot of retirees. So just to give you a look at that. Here's our retention rates. This is from 2006. If you can see here, it went down, but then somehow we retained here, but then back here in 2019 it went down again because we had a lot of retirees that year, and a lot of people leave as well. So that was the school year before COVID, but otherwise we average in that 92% area. So then the next information is our data related to, it's hard to see here, but it's in your report, and this is from the ISB's report card on the district. Staff in terms of student ratios based on ethnicity. So this is something that our recruitment efforts, we try to maintain or increase our recruitment efforts, but our staff specifically our staff of color are leaving our district, which we will be focusing on that. But, so this chart here actually shows you in these areas here, if you could see this one, the number of staff of color. The yellow is African American, the orange is Hispanic, and then the rest is white staff. So again, you could see we've got some additional work. This year was great, but then staff started leaving. So, and again, this is taken from ISB's district report card. So we also wanted to show you, these are the recruitment fairs we attended. Last year was the first year that we did more in person because of COVID. So even though we did do, there were still some, anyway, we still did some virtual fairs. This is generally the fairs that we attend, but if you can see the leads from that, we get most of them from the Illinois State University Job Fair. There was 18 leads, and the Lake County Job Fair as well. But this year we're going to do something a little different. Still focus on the job fairs, but do some in-house things as well. Here are all the sources where we place an ad in, and it depends on the position. When I first got here, the list was really small. It was probably about maybe half, if a little bit less, on the left-hand side in terms of places. So now we've picked organizations that pull out our postings into different organizations, but we hit all the colleges, universities. We've even tried to hit different sororities and fraternities, just so that we can get a broader group of people. So I wanted just to give you guys a snapshot of that. We did a lot of social media advertising with the assistance of Brooke. So, and then again, we did the bus, and we posted the sign. There's some recruitment fairs on the far right-hand side. Now, what started this year is the principals have been so great that in their newsletters to parents, there's an ad. If you get those and you see them, there's an ad at the bottom with, hey, these are the positions. And we list the positions that where a parent might say, well, my child's in school, so this is a job I could do. And we're just trying to tap into another market that we haven't tapped into. So we send it out to the parents. One of the retention efforts that Human Resources started, I'm going to take a drink here before I start copying.
Some water too. We recognize our new hires for the first year. We meet with them 2 times a year and give them district swag. The second year they're here, we thank them for coming back and staying with us, and then we give them another swag bag. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback because they don't really know human resources except for coming into the district, getting new hired, they have to take leaves, or if there's some disciplinary issues, or they resign. So in the bags, it's information about who to contact in case you have any questions. Here's some data on our exit interviews. I'm not going to go through the whole thing because it's in your report, but you can see I have some questions like why would you leave? What would attract you to stay? Would you come back if you were? What is your job satisfaction, or will you be satisfied with? So it's just data that shows you. Out of the 102 staff that departed the district, 50 participated either in person or completed the survey. So, which is pretty good, 50%, because they're not required to do that. And then moving forward, what Human Resources is doing, we just started working with our wellness committee and bringing in some new initiatives that are part of our health insurance program. So with the help of Stacy and Brooke, they created a wellness committee, and we're getting more involved in doing things that will ultimately help the district's benefit program. We will be implementing and starting working on either later on this year, or the beginning of next year, Frontline Central, and that's an onboarding and a leave automated system where employees can go on there and get their information. And I see Corey smiling.
Yes, sorry.
I hope that's a good thing.
I spilled all over myself. I spilled all over myself, and Joe was laughing at me. Sorry.
Okay. So
But I'm loving this too.
Again, we're going to increase our recruitment efforts with hopefully starting this year and into next year, bringing in some more programs. We are going to host an in-house recruitment fair. We did it last year, the dual language area did it. This year we're going to focus on that, and we're also going to have the special ed area and their related services positions. So hopefully we can get candidates that way. And then one thing is that we'll be working with the principals on staff retention awareness. Believer that employees need more than just come to work. They need to be connected with their supervisors and not just as an evaluator, but more building those relationships. And there's little things that as managers we can do to retain our staff that doesn't have to be monetary, and looking at that. So we're going to be working with the principals on that a little bit more. That's it. Like your report has a lot of details related to this. I'm sure you've all read it and know it by heart. Any questions?
I just had one come up, so I apologize for not giving it to you earlier. So if you can't answer right away, that's fine. How often are student teachers placed here?
Good question.
And what's done to help recruit them?
So we have partnerships with the colleges and universities. So our staff is not required to accept a student teacher. So whenever we get a question from a college or university, hey, I have a teacher that needs to be connected with another teacher, or maybe has to do some other work, we will bring it out to the principals, and they bring it out to their staff to see. We do have criteria, like we won't give a first year teacher a student teacher. So, but yeah, it's a difficult market because a lot of people are not going into education. So, there's some years we could have 3 student teachers, or some years we can have 7 or 8.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So,
Thank you.
Yeah, but we do that.
Also, a lot of people are leaving education, so the 92% retention rate is pretty amazing.
When you look at that, even though the 92% doesn't concern me as much as the staff that are leaving. That's a higher concern, because 92 is pretty good considering when you look at what the market is doing. But it's I'll be honest with you, it's our staff of color that are not staying with us and leaving. And that we have to do a better job at making them feel part of the organization and working on retaining them, and also working on recruiting more staff of color. So, which is hopefully
Sounds
part
like
of
a
the strategic plan.
culture issue, like a climate culture issue.
It could be, yeah.
It might be worth it to kind of tease out to see, are they leaving for better pay, or are they just leaving? Because, sometimes we get in situations, especially our competition with other North Shore school districts where you get so much, especially those younger teachers, you get so much experience here, and then they can go for a better, higher paying job, not a better position, but a higher paying job in a different district. Is it that, or is it a climate culture issue?
So that's why I encourage people to come in and do a face-to-face exit interview, because we can drill that down. And some people don't. Like the people that left, only one person actually completed a survey but didn't want to meet with me. So this year was the first year that we had less people wanting to do face-to-face exit interviews. So, and there's no way we're going to know that unless they disclose it with us.
Right.
So that's why I like to do in person, because I do get information. Like when we were going through the dual language program, and a lot of people that left that program, I met with Steve and Elizabeth, and I think even Vicki, you were there too, of some of the stuff that was shared with me and why they were leaving. So that's something that area has worked on trying to improve. Okay. All right. Any other questions?
That's amazing.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Martha.
Great report. Next up in our packet, we have a written report and a presentation on first quarter discipline. And that's going to be Dr. Walls, Associate Superintendent of Educational Services. Dr. Walls.
Thank you. Good evening. jump right into it for the first quarter discipline data. Next slide, please. So this is our policy on student behavior. And I went through and I highlighted words from our policy that really resonate with me. Safety and dignity, positive. Security or secure. Causes and resolutions, independence and self-discipline. So when we take a look at our first quarter discipline data by school, if you look in the far right column, you see that overwhelmingly our students have not received major referrals, right? Those numbers in yellow are very impressive and should be commended. That means that most of our students, the overwhelming majority of our students are responding to our general tier 1 systems that we have in place. Okay? When you go a little bit further and you break out or disaggregate the data by race, we see some differences. Now this is really small here, but you have it in your packet. So I will just go to the next slide. The next slide. Yeah, we'll go to the next slide, which illustrates our work. So the findings from the data by ethnicity shows us that we have disproportionate disciplinary practices across all of our campuses. Students who identify as Black or African American receive disproportionate disciplinary measures at all 4 of our campuses. Students who identify as Hispanic or Latino receive disproportionate disciplinary measures at 3 of our 4 schools. And then students who identify as white receive disproportionate disciplinary measures at 1 school. So that's our work. Let's go to the next one. So when you take those findings and hold them up against our policy, you know, it's like, okay, well, maybe there's something in our policy that's targeting these groups of students in a certain way. So I went back, I took a look at that, and then I read aspiration number 4 a bit more closely. Because it says in our board policy that we will address the causes of a student's misbehavior and provide opportunities for all individuals involved to participate in its resolution. So I highlighted and bolded and underlined all individuals involved because that means the adults too, right? However, when I look at the policy, it appears racially and ethnically neutral. And so the wondering is that if our policy is ethnically neutral, how do we explain the disparate manner in which groups of students receive disciplinary measures? So I titled this slide Brave, Courageous, and Bold. So if you are feeling some sort of way about anything I'm saying, take it up with Dr. Maychak. This is what he charged us with this year. And I believe in it, right? Because we have to do something different for our students if we want different outcomes. So there's a short video that I want to play. I'll move out of the way. 15 seconds.
Did you see the misbehavior?
Okay, so this video is the work of Dr. Walter Gilliam, and the clip is from a study where he asked random teachers attending a conference to watch a video to detect student misbehavior. Okay? The participants were told that some of the clips may or may not contain challenging behaviors. And then the participants were instructed to press a key every time they thought a kid might misbehave. Anytime they could anticipate that something was going to happen. And the researchers, they used an eye tracking procedure to determine who the participants watched the most. What they didn't tell the participants is that all the students were actors and there was no misbehavior in the video.
Oh, good. That didn't see any.
Okay? So, go back please. Okay. One more. So from that, the researchers came up with these 3 questions. Who do we watch the most? Are we aware of it? And are we willing to admit it? Because they found that if we look for something in only one place, that is likely where we will find it. All right, so another body of research identifies 3 leading causes for disproportionate disciplinary data. The first is they talk about cultural misperception and misinterpretation. And what you see in green are our district responses to these leading causes identified by researchers. I'm very proud to say that our responses are not limited to just fixing kids, right? Because in our policy, we don't believe there's a difference racially or ethnically amongst our kids. We believe that 7(1):90 applies to all of our students, right? Okay, and so here are some of our responses, again, that don't necessarily all focus on fixing kids, but really focus on that all involved piece, which includes all the adults in the system. So what I listed first under the misperception bullet is the strategic plan, right? We're right on the eve of that. And so we have so much opportunity to make sure we are taking a close look. I've heard the board talk about infusing equity into everything we do, and it should certainly be the foundation of all of our moves. And I'm grateful to work in a place where you believe that too. All right, but we have beyond diversity that we offer. I won't go through all of these. You're familiar with many of them. We have different strategies and structures to engage our parents. We heard last month from our principals. They each stood up and talked about all the things that they are doing differently and better for our students and for our families. The experts also identified student resistance and defiance. And some of our responses, because that's real and it's true, right? It's not just, the kids have to show up ready, and if they're not ready, we have to teach them to be ready, and then they need to respond to what we teach them, and then we intervene when they don't, okay? So some of the things we're doing in this area are problem-solving teams, MTSS, restorative practices, which we trained our entire district on this year, so that our staff have better tools to have conversations with students and know what questions to ask when intervening. We're also working very closely with our assistant principals who mostly handle discipline in our schools on consistent practices and making sure we're interpreting policy in the same way and applying like consequences when necessary. And then the third area is the lack of academic and social support. And some of the things that we're doing in our district include our core academic classes that we just started this year at middle school. Dr. Maychek is meeting with the principals monthly to look at data across systems. We've really become intentional about our reentry and our re-engagement processes when students do need to leave school for whatever period of time, for whatever reason. We want to make sure that they're just not coming back the way they left, and that we've taken a close look at what we can change in the environment so that the student won't be an in-school or out-of-school suspension again. And then we're just launching a brand new program where information came out today about Wild Kids Saturdays. It's another opportunity that starts next month for any student to come to school and get help. It could be a student who's at risk. It could be a student who's advanced and challenged, right? We're just going to open the doors of our school to provide some additional supports. So the National Equity Project defines equity as reducing the predictability of who succeeds and who fails. So I didn't tell you what the outcome of the research study was, but I wonder if you have some predictions about who amongst those 4 kid actors were watched the most and who were deemed most likely to misbehave. And it's relevant because of our data set that I showed you a few slides ago. Okay? But 2 things can be true. Students must be held accountable for their actions, and the adults must be held accountable for how we respond in the teaching that we do on the front end to try to disrupt some of the student misbehavior. And so I leave you with that. I'm hopeful that when we come before you Q2, that we're a little bit closer to where our policy says we want to be. And my principal colleagues are here, as well as some of my district level colleagues, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. Board members, any questions?
I have a question. So, first of all, bold, brave, bold, and courageous, bold, however, I love it. Because we have talked about it for a long time, and it's nice to see that we are actually putting forth an effort. But if we have all of these things that was on slide number 7, why do we still have such a high rate? It feels, I don't want to say feeling, it has to be cultural. And how do we change that? Because children mimic what they see. So if we're not holding the adults responsible when they act out and have bad behaviors, how do we want to keep the children in line? And so I know that sometimes little black and brown kids can say something and it's looked at as being mean or whatever. We call it playing a dozen, but some people don't. They're like, that's mean, you gotta go to the principal's office. If the staff doesn't understand culturally who we are, we're always gonna be misunderstood and always gonna be sent to the principal's office for things that we don't have to go for. So what are we doing to fix that in the schools?
I think the first point speaks to what we are hopeful we are doing, right? And that is really talking about training, having real conversations about what our data says, right? I could have stopped at slide number 4. Over 95% or 94% of all of our students across our district have no referrals, and we can celebrate. And yes, that should be celebrated. And when you take a look at who's in that 2%, who's in that 1%, who's in that 6%, it tells us another part of the story. Not a different story, but just another part of the story. And so I'm offering that some of these things, some of our responses are getting at that part of the story.
So these are all new responses?
No, right. No, they're not.
Right. And we still have the same people? I don't know. Well, Dr. Majek's different, but we still have the same people. We got the same responses. I don't know what's going to be different. I applaud you all, but I am at a phase, because I've been sitting on this board off and on since 2016. I've been hearing about strategic plan, and I've been hearing about inclusivity and diversity and all of those things. And I'm tired of talking about it. I want to do it. We can write on a piece of paper till we're blue in the face, but until we are practicing what we are preaching, we're just talking. We're just talking for the camera. So I hope that we will be brave, courageous, and bold, so that our district can be, because we're great now, but we can always do better. And I want us to be, when people think of middle school and elementary education, I want them to think of Woodland District 50.
I agree with you. And I think it starts with this level of conversation. Because I know that this conversation is not being had in many other districts.
Other questions, comments?
I would just like to say I appreciate you highlighting the strategic plan, because as we're getting ready to do that work, it's something that we can all have in mind. It's good to to, have this fresh in our minds, and so we can, as Renee is saying, actually do it. But in order to do it, we have to plan, but I get what you're saying, like, we've planned, when are we gonna do it? But it does need to always be a part of our planning, so I appreciate that, thank you.
Other questions or comments?
I have two. How does it get to the classroom level? Specifically, I mean, you've shared some really important and insightful and really like things that our staff needs to think about, right? So how does it get there?
I will invite my principal colleagues to talk a little bit about how you do this work in your schools.
Yeah, great.
What your question is what? I'm sorry.
So we talk about, like we talk about this, and I've now seen the discipline presentation 6 times, and each time it's basically, we're working on it, but we still see students of color.
Stand up and come to the podium so the people on the camera can hear and see and hear you.
So we see students of color overrepresented in discipline referrals.
Okay.
How does that get to the teachers where, we're having this conversation and, this is something that we're working on? How does that get to the classroom level?
So I can speak with what I'm doing in my building. With what we're doing, we are utilizing our equity leaders. And what we have each month is we have equity chats. And so they are going on, and the equity leaders and myself, we go on teams. And we actually talk about, we're reading articles, and we were talking about microaggressions. And we are talking, but we're doing it on teams with 4 teachers and myself and the equity leader. So that's different this year than we have done before. So when you say, what are we doing different? That's what we're doing different. And we're really talking, and then we're talking about like, well, what does that look like? Have you noticed that in this team? Or have you noticed that within your hallway? Or have you noticed that? Bringing out real life examples, because those are conversations that are hard, right? And I think that's what happens sometimes, why the work is hard. When you say, we keep talking about it. And I think that is where we are sometimes, and I think we just have to keep pushing because those conversations are hard. So that's something new that we're doing differently. At my staff meetings, I am talking about discipline. I'm bringing out discipline strategies for my teachers. And so those are the things that I'm doing differently this year when you talk about what are you doing different. And I think it's just having those true conversations about and also calling out things that you see that's not, and I want to say this correctly, right? We have to be the ones to say that looked to me like that was some inequity that happened there. So we have to be the ones to step up and say those things. So and have the courage to be able to say those things. So I'm having those conversations, those small conversations, but I'm utilizing my equity leaders to be able to do that. And we are having side conversations when there are things that are happening. So those are just 2 examples of what I'm doing differently in my building. And again, restorative practices, and those are the things that we're doing. I'm actually doing restorative practices myself with teachers and then also with teachers and students. We're doing that more, and with students, but also with students and teachers when that relationship has been broken for just miscommunication. And so that has been working as well.
Yeah, in terms of things that are new this year, I would echo the restorative practices is a big part of that, and I want to highlight what Dr. Wall said about everybody who's involved in that, in terms of you have the student who might be the quote-unquote offender, right, and then there are other students who are the victims and the teacher in the role. Part of that restorative conversation is to understand the why behind the what. A lot of times the discipline process is like looking at a chart, or it can be constructed construed as I look at a chart, student did X, then therefore they get Y punishment, right? And if we never go back a level and try to understand the feelings and the motivations behind kids, then we're going to just see that again, right? And that's going to just repeat. And so new this year is really trying to probe more deeply into each event that happens so that we are really, everyone leaves that space feeling heard and understood, including the person who may have done the most harm in terms of, we may not agree with their rationale, but there was one, right? And helping the other students to understand that student's perspective, or helping the teachers to understand that student's perspective, and every stakeholder there, I think, is very important and is a big part of the process of peeling that onion and getting deeper and deeper into those layers. I think the second thing that speaks directly to your question about how do we get into the classroom, one of the things, as we joked about our limit riots and everything like that, my first year here, we really focused on building wide PBIS, right? Those big quarterly challenges and how we walk through the hallway and all those things. And those are very important, and they can help set the tone for the other places. But to your point, 80, 90% of it stays inside the classroom, right, with the teacher. And so this year we've gone, in accordance with what PBIS says, we started the year, and I said the number one thing that I want us to work on is PBIS inside the classroom. And teachers had to submit a plan based on a rubric that comes from PBIS of how are you teaching your skills? What are the consequences and incentives in your room, right? What are the ways in which you're going to acknowledge positive behavior more frequently than negative behavior? And unlike, places far away from here that I've been in the past, sometimes, we create a wonderful piece of paper and it gathers dust on things. I have come back to that every single month, every single training, every single team leader meeting, and I followed it up with by going into every classroom and doing observations very specifically around that, saying, I'm coming to see your matrix on the wall. You said that you have it. I want to come and see it, right? And I'm coming to see your classroom incentives, and I celebrate the teachers who are doing wonderful jobs with this, because the vast majority are. But for those teachers who haven't yet implemented fully, I give them the feedback that they need. I go in and I sit there for 20 minutes and I literally count. How many nice things did I hear a teacher say about a student's behavior versus stop doing that, or, that's wrong. And I give that teacher that feedback, right? Because all of that is about setting the tone in the environment, because most behaviors don't happen like randomly out of thin air, right? There are a lot of antecedents that happen, and so we are trying very much to be very dedicated about and strategic about what does it look like inside the classroom. Your classroom is different than others. I'm not saying everybody has to do it the same way, but your way has to be in accordance with our PBIS philosophy to proactively prevent these behaviors. And I'm very happy to say that I've been able to be in every single instructor's classroom so far this year and give them written feedback about that at least once and some many different times, right? So it is, if it were easy, everybody would do it, right? It is a long, arduous process, and it will only get better incrementally. And there are probably moments where we see 2 steps forward and 1 step back. But I do believe that we are absolutely taking a big step forward with some of the things that we're doing around PBIS and restorative practices that are different from where, at least I understand, where we have been in the past.
Can I just ask one question, just, and maybe you or Stacy can, just so we can just get a little clarifying question and bring it in. I guess Joe asked how are we getting into the classroom. I don't think it's about what are we doing that is different, because we have the same people and the same things up here. I think what we need to know, or especially what I want to know, example, a child comes to, a teacher sends a kid down for discipline to your office. And after you've investigated, you find that it's probably really not. Are you having the conversations with those teachers to say, what made you send them here? Is there another way we could have handled this? Was it necessary to have this level of discipline? Because why aren't we practicing the least restrictive? And then have those hard conversations. Because because that's how we get it in the classroom. PBIS and all of that is good. That's good for the kids, but kids don't discipline themselves. The adults do. And so the adults who are sending them there, if you're sending them there at a higher rate than you're sending other kids, that's the issue.
I can share a little bit. So being with the youngest students in the district, I think I would echo what my colleagues have said, but it does start with us, right? It starts with us and it ends with us in terms of we're the adults in the building. And I think one thing that we have really been dedicated to is exactly what he was talking about, is that every behavior has a function. And at our level, students, we have to determine, do students know how to do school, right? Like, so a lot of times things come down to my office and it's really just a matter of like, why did this behavior happen? What's happening? That's why those restorative questions are so important, like, what were you thinking at the time? Like, how do you feel now? How can we make it right? So it's more restorative in nature versus punitive, right? And I think from there we have the conversation with the teachers is, what are the patterns we're seeing? What are the antecedents? What are we seeing that are projecting these children to either act this way? They're getting either a response to the behavior that's either positive, right, or ignored, or sent down to the office. And so for us, at least at my level, I can speak to that. We have a lot of conversations. We just talked about it today at our staff meeting, our grade level meeting, is why are we seeing an increase in students that are having trouble regulating their emotions? And what are we doing to support the students in that environment? Because again, students are coming to us from a variety of backgrounds. Our population has continued to change over the years, but I don't know that our teaching styles have changed, right? Like, are we reflecting our population? Are we reflecting that? What are we doing differently? We talked today in our grade level about Native Americans and pilgrims, and that whole piece of what are we teaching, what are we modeling, what do our, even just the little clip art you use, right? If it's got Indian feathers and pilgrims, and like, are we being sensitive to that? That's a worksheet maybe from 18, 20 years ago, and some of our teachers get stuck in a rut of, and we're all guilty of it. I used that, you know, maybe the first year I was teaching, we know better now. But are we making the actual change that you're talking about? And that's the piece that I think is so very difficult to reflect on ourselves, and the students are forcing us to reflect, right? Because they're coming to us with different family dynamics, different school experiences, and especially post-COVID, we have to all get back into what are we doing that's different, and how are we changing with the new way that school is occurring? Because we'll never be the same, right? Post-COVID, it's not going to go back to how it was, and it shouldn't, but we also have to embrace that our district is unique and celebrate the diversity in our district versus not change and go back to traditional ways. So I feel, at least at primary, and I know my colleagues as well, is we're all having those conversations based on the needs in our school and with our age group, because it's different, obviously, at every age group. So I hope that dispels a little bit of what is behind this.
And the last thing I just want to share with everyone is you know, similar to what everybody has shared. So on a monthly basis, we set out our discipline data, as I'm sure everybody else does. But one of those things that we're doing more so with is discussing what is that looking like, as Dr. Wall shared. The students who are referred not just one time but multiple times. What are we doing differently for those students? I've had a lot more of those conversations this year than in the past. One of the things, Dr. Maychek led a discipline committee, and as a result of that, it was a wonderful endeavor in that everybody was able to sit down and really take a hard look at our disciplinary practices, right? And so having these conversations about consequences, and do students need consequences? Because what's the point of a consequence? The point of a consequence is to change the behavior. So what behavior also needs to be changed within the classroom as well? And that comes from the adult side. So I just want to echo that part. The other sentiment, you know, just like everybody else, as we're working through this here, one of the things we've done through our announcements is we really focused on those awareness months, focusing on those lessons, focusing on individuals who all of our students and all of our staff can look up to. And now our students are doing them. All of our third grade students are doing those. So now they're sharing this information with our school community. And our teachers are hearing it, our administration, everybody is hearing it within the building to create that inclusive environment that we want for all of our students. So it is getting to the classroom level. It's having a lot more of those conversations. And frankly, I worked in retail, shocker, for many years, so customer service is kind of my thing. And I've had conversations with people showing them how talking on the phone is going to do a whole lot more than sending that quick email, right? And then also doing this, where you flip the phone up and instead of doing the talking, actually doing the listening. And having conversations with people and understanding where they're coming from and why people are saying what they're saying, understanding their story and how we can better meet their needs. It really is person to person. It's making those connections, going back to the restorative practices, those deep-rooted relationships and creating those strong foundations in those relationships is key to having that. And that same can be said with our staff as well. They need to trust us when we're having those conversations. And those are, to your point, Ms. Ament, those are tough conversations to have. You know, because a lot of the times having those conversations, we're not just pointing the finger at somebody else, we're also pointing the finger at ourselves. And so there are reflective conversations that need to happen, and sometimes they go great, sometimes they don't. And it's just continuing to work through and work with our staff and work with our students and work with our community just to better meet their needs. You know, one of the sayings we had years ago is just, you know, the population is changing, the population is changing. You know, we keep, well, no, this is who we have. This is where we are at, and we need to meet the needs of the students where they are at. Not where we think they should be, but where they are at and what we can do to support them. So I hope that addresses your guys, everyone's question here this evening.
Yeah, it does. I mean, the reason behind my question is that coming out of COVID, I honestly, I looked at the numbers and thought, wow, that's actually not very many discipline referrals, right? Because coming out of COVID, I think a lot of kids really need to learn how to be in school and be in a classroom and cooperate with one another and focus on what it means to really be a part of a learning community in a positive way. So, but what I am afraid of is that teachers would say, well, I just won't send a kid to the office. I just, like, if it's too tough, I'm just going to deal with it here and not really involve the community and helping kids learn how to be in school. So I see it from a couple of different perspectives as a teacher. On one hand, like, we definitely want to make sure that kids are learning the content. On the other hand, they have to learn how to be good people. And if we teach them how to be good people, they're a lot less likely to end up in your office. But if they end up in your office, then that's a good thing because you're really nice people with a lot to say, right? So just kind of making sure that we think about it, not just in terms of, like, at the end of the day when you're caught doing something, but like at the beginning of the day, can we help you, right, do the right thing and avoid all of that and just have a positive classroom experience?
But I do think that we still need to always challenge ourselves.
Oh, totally.
To make sure
Yeah.
that we are looking at, I'm thinking in my role is a referral, right? To make sure that what Ms. Amanda said, to make sure that we are looking at those referrals. Because I did that today. I'm thinking about a situation I did today with, like, hey, is that truly a referral? And I think Dr. Richard, when we were working with the team, we looked at office managed behavior and you know, staff managed behavior and really working at that and making sure the teachers are really thinking about that and how can we do it in some of those things. So really working with the teachers. So
That's what I'm
I get it.
asking.
I get it.
Thank you.
Any other questions, board? Okay, you guys want to wrap it up? Is that?
That was it.
Okay. Thank you. Great, great discussion and great presentation.
Thank you.
Can I say one thing? I'm sorry.
Oh, sure.
Before I was listening, so to go back to Ms. Ament's question, to me, the common thread running through all the comments or the things that we're trying to do, the two things that we have in common are student engagement and also building relationships. And I had the privilege, I've spent a lot of time lately going through all the schools, but when I was at middle school about a week ago, first I was in the cafeteria for about an hour just talking to the kids. And, you know, one of the things, and this is not a criticism of anyone, but just an observation that was kind of eye-opening, when you look at a school where you have like 97% of the kids who follow the rules, and when I
get infractions. In a school of almost 1,800 students in an 8 or a 9 period school day, if you multiply 1,800 times 10, just for the sake of math, that's 18,000 opportunities during the day for a kid to make a bad choice or a bad decision. And the fact that 97 or 98% of our students make the right decisions should be celebrated, and it's often not, because we expect them to do the right thing, right? And when I was in the cafeteria, because you hang around particularly with some boisterous eighth graders, and I had understood that, let's say, maybe kids like to throw food, or I'm going to take something off of your tray because it looks good, and I didn't buy that or whatever. And I'm just talking to them, and I asked some of the kids, like, well, you come in and you sit down and you do what you're supposed to do. You eat lunch and you socialize and you go to class. Like, what do you get for doing that, for following the rules? And they're like, well, nothing. We get to eat our lunch. And we spend so much time focused on the students who aren't doing it, who don't get it, which we need to, as you've heard. But I think what we're missing, acknowledging and holding up those models, the kids who are doing what they're supposed to do. And that's, I think, the district-wide PBIS, MTSS piece that Lisa Cohen has been working on leading has been huge in that area. The other piece that I want to mention also is the middle school example. I had the fortune of sitting in on a team meeting as one of the 6th grade teams, and every kid on that team is successful. Not some, or not most, but every kid. And when Tiffany was meeting with that group of teachers, she said, well, what kinds of things are you doing? What did you put in place? And it was not magic. It was something that any team of teachers in our school district could do. And most are doing. But the teacher said, we have Second Step, and actually we kind of got the script, but when we meet with our kids, we kind of change the script if we have to based on what the kids are showing up with and what they need from us that day. They've set up opportunities, something called a lunch bunch, where kids can come back onto team with their lunch to get extra help. And they've included Explore teachers on the team, which is cool for the teachers, they said, because those teachers get to do something fun and not graded and kind of interesting with the kids. As a reward, the students who are done with their work and who have reached a certain level can go to get an extra art class or go learn something about music that's not in the 6th grade curriculum. And so there's really creative things that we can do if we choose to do it to engage kids. I mean, there's some of the issues are non-negotiable, right? If a student brings a weapon to school, real or lookalike, if a student brings some kind of smoking paraphernalia, those are non-negotiables. We have rules for that. But 99% of the discipline is things like disrespect or disobedience. And I think that if we built relationship with the kids, we could address some of those things proactively, like the 6th grade team at middle school did, where it's not that those things aren't happening, but there's a different way to talk to the kids about them, and here's a solution, and here's a better way to get that need met. I totally agree with Stacy that every student behavior is purposeful, and it's our responsibility to try to understand what's behind that behavior, and then how do we change it so that those needs can be met in a appropriate way in school. And when you do have a situation, and I also don't think it's a panacea just to say, well, we're going to have teachers who look like the kids that they teach is wonderful, but we also have to understand the kids that we teach. And I think of my own experiences as a white male going to school with other white kids, when we talk about equity and the ability to predict behavior, I kind of knew as a teacher what behaviors meant, what signals meant, what certain words and gestures meant. And when we have students who are no longer looking like the kids we grew up with or who we went to school with or who we first started teaching looked like, then it's on us to provide professional development to our teachers and staff to help them grow and help them understand the students who are coming to them every day. So I apologize if it's kind of rambling, but all these things that we're doing keep coming back to student engagement and all the things we're trying to do in terms of helping kids be better equipped academically to succeed, more sports, more clubs, more after-school opportunities.
Saturday school, which we're going to start, not as a punishment, but as a way to get extra help. Ways to engage kids. And then also the other part, building a relationship, whether it's through restorative practices, the one-to-one conversations, or helping teachers through different professional development opportunities like the critical conversations PD that we offer regularly. So that's the common thread running through. And I know you're not expecting it to, but it certainly won't happen in a day or a week or even a year. But as Lene said, we want to be better, come to you with better data in quarter 2 than we did in quarter 1. And actually the data that we came to you in quarter 1 is better than the data that we came to you in quarter 4 last year. So anyway, thank you for the opportunity.
Well, thank you. Great presentation and great discussion. Looking forward to quarter 2 report. Next up, we have a written report on the middle school roof phase 3. Was provided by our Associate Superintendent, Chris Bobek. Are there any questions for Chris? Nope, I'm getting all. Okay, thumbs up there. Then we'll follow on with written report on district vehicle replacement. Again, Mr. Bobek provided a report. Are there any questions for Chris on the vehicle replacement?
It's just the 2 in red, right?
2 in red.
Okay, nope.
Any others? Okay, then we will move on to, in your packet, you have the information on the revised board policies, 2:30, 3:40E, which is an exhibit, 4:170, 4:190, 7:15, 7:340, and 7:345. These policies were discussed and updated at the policy committee last Thursday. Is that correct? Okay. And are there any questions regarding the policies as presented? If there are no questions or discussions, we'll bring these policies back as an action item for December. Next up we have is freedom of information. Do we have any
One
that you would like to share with us?
What's that? This one's a Smart Procure. Smart Procure received in October, filled actually a couple of days ago. This is a quarterly Smart Procure that they always come out with their request for purchase order numbers, purchase date, line item details, line item quantity, line item price, vendor ID number, name, address, contact person, and their email address. So we fill that on a quarterly basis and send it to them.
Are there any questions for Chris? Discussion? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to board improvements and operations. I mentioned previously that the policy committee met and you have the revised policies for review and will be on the as an action item in December. Are there any other committee reports?
I attended a PTA meeting earlier today. They had set aside some extra funds for principals to use, and they're still, I think waiting on to hear what they're going to do with them. But they also have, I think there's a Chuck E. Cheese fundraiser coming up. Lots of fundraisers going on. There was a Panera one recently. The chocolate fundraiser they did, they sold $70,000 worth of chocolate, which is insane to me. And made like $20,000+ in profit. So PTA is rocking and rolling. Yeah, they're doing great things.
That's really cool.
Oh, the band. The band did it. No. I love Butterfly. They're so good.
Yeah. Finance, facilities, and sustainability met. We spent probably half the time talking about just the levy in general. And then the sustainability portion. We're still talking, we're investigating some larger projects, still looking in the solar realm, maybe expanding beyond solar into, we'll be taking a look at batteries, just as more investigatory than anything right now, since, it's a little bit newer. There's a lot of rebates, there's a lot of incentives out there that have been happening. So we just want to make sure that at least we get some sort of eyes on it to make sure they're not passing up something that would be fantastic. So in January, we'll have somebody come out and actually kind of go over it, who they should know a lot more than we know right now.
Anything else?
Nope. That's it for finance.
Then, discussion of the board professional development at the joint annual conference. Any discussion there? I know I'm heading down for the all-day workshop tomorrow for board presidents. And then I also have the delegate assembly on Saturday. Then that takes up most of my time. So then I'll choose from there what to do. Anyone want to share anything or any suggestions for other board members?
I think there is one section about strategic planning, which I think is really timely, so I was going to try to go to that. But I was just trying to pick like a wide range of things and just become a more well-rounded board member, try to do things about equity and inclusion and finance and, legal matters, and just trying to do a broad range of things. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, that's the same thing I'm doing. I did a nice wide variety of sessions for tomorrow and Saturday, so kind of excited to see what other districts are doing.
Yeah, it's always good to hear what other districts are doing. Anyone else want to share anything?
I have too many choices for each time frame.
That's a good thing.
So like one of it is my school, my district, BOE's role in equity and empowerment. But at the same time, it's amplifying student voice with a seat at the board table, which is also at the same time as effective and user-friendly superintendent evaluations.
Is that the 12:30 on Saturday?
That's 10:30 on Saturday.
There was one section on Saturday where I was like, I could go to all of these.
Yeah.
I have 10:30 Saturday, post-election COVID recovery, what's next for schools?
I'm not doing that one.
Yeah.
I'm done with it.
We'll see what that is.
10:30 has some good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll be going from room to room.
Don't have to go to the bargaining sessions after our successful contract negotiation. That's good.
Any others? Okay. Did you all have a chance to look at the resolutions and any feedback? Just to make sure we all understand that process a little bit. Typically what happens is if the board doesn't, IASB executive board, they will try to put most things in the consent agenda, and with the hope that no one pulls it out of consent agenda. And so we just usually vote on, as a consent agenda. But typically what will happen is some of the things, certain school districts, if they didn't, say if the executive board says do not adopt, for instance, that school district may come and pull it out of consent agenda because they want to discuss it on the floor. So that's where it becomes a discussion on the floor, and then that's where the time comes in. Or say, 1 year they pulled our charter school issues out of consent agenda. It wasn't because they didn't agree, it was just because they had questions. And so then in that case, then the board that has submitted the resolution has to get up and, explain to the body, the reason behind that resolution. And then there's maybe some question and answers and debate on the floor. So it can go a long time or it can go a short time, just depending. So with that in mind, most of the things we'll probably vote in consent agenda, except, and we'll know when we get there, is if a board has filed a motion to remove something or have something reconsidered, we know that when we get there. We don't know it ahead of time. So the discussion changes based on what happens on that day. satisfied with how the executive board voted?
Satisfied.
Oh, satisfied? Okay. Oh, good. Well, that's easy then. Okay. Next up then, we have review of our November 5th Trust Edge workshop.
Can I just say something real quick about the conference and about you going to represent us? Though she doesn't want us to be recognized as a board on National School Board Day, Dr. Little has been recognized herself as a distinguished board leader by the Board Leader Recognition Program of the Illinois Association of School Boards.
We don't know what that means.
Oh, it's a huge honor.
Yeah, it's huge. It's colorful, right?
Put it on your fridge.
We don't know what that means. Who knows?
Way to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, back to Trust Edge workshop. This was something we all participated in on a Saturday. And I appreciate everyone that was able to come. I thought it was a great discussion, so I wanted to bring it back up because I think this is something we really should try to incorporate as much as possible into how we do business and think about, and the whole idea of going through this training was to even kind of prep us for the strategic plan. So I'll open it up to you all in terms of the discussion. And I know, and we gave you the packets.
My trust shield.
Yeah, your trust shield. You have one too, Corey.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. I don't know if anybody bought their completed trust shield so that these two would know how to complete it.
Yeah, I don't think I did. I think I took everything out of my backpack.
What were the answers?
I have mine.
What were the answers?
I thought it was. I'm very grateful I was able to go, because it's just the whole concept can be applied to big teams, small teams, home, sports teams. It just can be applied everywhere, and you can make it as do it on a personal level, or I told my husband, I'm like, I don't know if you've ever seen this. I'm like, but I thought of you because he has, I think, 6 people that he manages. So I'm like, you could do this too. Because his team is across 3 different time zones and they don't physically work together. And I think just really reinforcing it's okay to be vulnerable and share who you are, where you came from, because it does have an impact on how you work, your approach to things, and once that's known, then it just, everybody understands each other better. So.
Yeah. Cindy, do you want to just briefly explain about the background?
So it has 8 sections that make up my trust shield: background, values, mission, life priorities, strengths, improvements, life goals, and legacy. And like the legacies, what do you want other people to remember you by after you have died, have left an organization? And I did my legacy as more on a personal family level. I knew she loved me. Like, that's what I want my family to know after I'm gone is that I love them. Life priorities, family, taking care of my diabetes so that I can have a healthy life, my friends, my mental health. That's what I focus on a daily basis. Improvements. Sometimes I'm too judgy. Sometimes I'm not very good at sharing my gratitude and appreciation. I need to keep my house cleaner, and I hate cleaning, but I still need to do it. Sometimes I'm quick to annoyance. Just self-reflection things that you should, if I want to be a strong, whole person, I should recognize my pluses and my minuses. So, yeah.
the, that full day of Trust Edge experience. Anyone in the audience that attended? I know several of you were there and participated fully, and that was really good to see. Okay, hearing no one else.
I shared too much.
Next up, we have a discussion on the strategic plan process and timeline. So, anything you want to add, or?
Sure. So, one of the things that I had suggested after speaking with my administrative colleagues after the last meeting, where we decided to facilitate this process in-house, to use that term, was I suggested to Dr. Little and to Mr. Droz, when we were coming up with the agenda, that what if the administration kind of pitched a plan to the board just the way that the three facilitators did, and certainly taking into consideration all the feedback that you had shared about each of the presentations back on October 15th. And so the most salient things is being cognizant of wanting to, because there will be momentum, as we talked about tonight, there will be momentum and people will be excited about this work, but you don't want to lose that over, dragging this out for like 6 months. And so if you look at the timelines, and certainly those are, we all understand that if the board wanted to tweak it, change it, amend it, but just in terms of like laying it out, we would have our first conversation, with the entire group of stakeholders towards the end of January, and then we would spend February in small group, in various committee work, working the plan and reporting out and coming back again to revise, with the goal, starting with the end in mind, the goal would be to have a completed plan to implement July 1, but we would want it to the board at the March meeting. And why that date is significant is, with the election coming, and we just want to make sure that the people who were working on the plan had an opportunity to weigh in on it and, give it their stamp of approval when we've completed it. So that's the timeline. One of the pieces that it's been really helpful already is that Dr. Little was able to put me in touch with Christy Guillory-Reed, who is the DEI consultant who listened in to the presentations on the 13th. And I've had an opportunity now to have 2 conversations with her. One of the pieces, and so I was sharing with her that one of the things I wanted to model, whatever the plan looks like, the one that I've been impressed with, that I've talked about a lot, is the one from Washington State, the Highline District near Seattle. And Dr. Reed mentioned how Washington State really nationally is a leader in equity and inclusivity work. I didn't realize that. But it was interesting because she shared a framework, a rubric, that she found that the state uses when, in terms of, like, for example, if they're going to announce a grant or a public works project, that there's a filter with a series of questions that the group would, or the entity would ask to make sure that whatever we're doing is being done through an equity and inclusivity lens. Who's being included? Who's being excluded? What are the ramifications if you spend money on this? What will you not be able to spend money on that could impact other, at-risk groups? And really great questions that, quite frankly, should have been asking all along. So then, when both of us were kind of on a call and we're both in a Google Doc and we're both on websites, we found Highline School District had actually modified that state document to adapt it to its own strategic plan work in its district, and so it adapted those questions, but to fit schoolwork, district and board work. And I actually, in my Friday newsletter that I shared with the board, I shared a PDF attachment of that document. And so I think what's really encouraging is that when we get to the point where we've got our goal areas and then we're coming up with benchmarks, what will success look like in this area? We already have the filter to put those benchmarks through to say, to be sure we're not missing somebody. so that's encouraging. The other part that I wanted to add was I worked really closely with Brooke, and I want to compliment her in this setting because she's got so many great ideas. And I also am very grateful that when I have a bad idea, she's not afraid to tell me. But I'm not sure that's going to work, right? But so it's humbling, but it's also really good for me. And one of the things we talked about was this idea of, after talking to Dr. Little the other day, we really want to get out in front of this and start getting feedback from the community as soon as we can, because then that feedback, whether it's a thought exchange, a survey, whatever the medium is, in terms of what our community, what our parents, what our teachers and staff, and really even our students too, what our community feels we're doing well and where we need to improve and what our priorities should be, we will find trends and themes and present those to the board, and that would be a way to say, all right, right now we have these 5 strategic goal areas, you know, the school pride, and we've got finance and facilities, and we've got student wellness, well-being, but to see, are those still effective? Are they accurate? Or based on feedback from our community and all these different constituencies, do we need to change the larger goal group to be a better fit for where we're trying to head in the next 5 years? So I've talked to all of our administrators. Everyone is really excited about doing this work, and people have emailed me, do I get to facilitate something? Can I be a group leader? You know, I've tapped into people who, just from our meetings, have been really good with tech and how to engage people, whether it's through real-time surveys like Kahoot, or whether it's how we can show our current reality in different areas through a multimedia presentation and have people get the feel of where we are now in these different areas. So we're really excited to get started, and again, certainly with the understanding that and the knowledge that it's the board's plan, and so anything that you have in your packet in terms of a laid out process, we're certainly open to and would expect feedback that if you wanted us to change something, whether it's timelines or how we're approaching particular groups or whatever, meeting to get information, very open to your feedback.
Okay. Well, and you'll see this timeline and how we can continue this discussion at the board meeting in December. So, but are there any questions or suggestions right now?
No, I mean, I'm sitting on the strategic plan for the district I work at, and I like the format. It looks very, very similar to what we're running through. I don't know how you pronounce the SWOT analysis. I'm a big fan of that. So that's a format I'm a big fan of. So.
Do you anticipate these projected dates to stay these dates so that we can all get them on our calendar so that we're available, or do you think those will be tweaked?
That's one of the, I was actually a little bit more aggressive with my dates, and I've been talking to some of our administrators. They're like, maybe we should slow down. And only the idea of being able to communicate work at different stages and then get feedback on the work we've done to be able to then incorporate it into like the next draft, which makes a lot of sense in hindsight. But to answer your question, that would really be up to the board. I mean, if you're comfortable, administration is comfortable with timelines that are in that document. Okay. If the board wanted them changed, either to tighten it up or, hey, I don't think that's going to be enough time. And I would also anticipate that with the plan, the idea that ultimately would go into effect July 1, as we're working this process, if somehow there was meetings 2 and 3 where we're working on the benchmarks and the key performance indicators, if somehow collectively or as the board you decided, I think we're going to need another meeting on this, you could certainly amend it kind of as we're going. Mm-hmm. But in terms of like sort of posts that we're hoping to hit, we are really, really comfortable with what we share.
Other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much. Next up then, we have the status of correspondence. We have one in the board packet. It doesn't appear to want a response, but did you guys have a look at that? And it was more informational. Any questions or comments about that? Okay. Well, hearing none, we'll open it up for citizen statements. Anything come through? No? There's no reason to go back into closed session. Actually, I think there is one. So I will make a motion to go into closed session to discuss the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees, specific individuals who are independent contractors or specific volunteers of the district, or legal counsel for the district, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee, a specific individual who serves as an independent contractor or a volunteer of the district, or against legal counsel for the district to determine its validity.
So moved.
Second?
Roll call vote.
Brianna.
Yes.
Anna. Yes. Corey.
Yes.
Renee. Yes. Oh my gosh, I'm going completely backwards. Libby.
Yes.
Joe.
Yeah.
Carla.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay, well, good night. I think it'll be brief, but I.
And then we'll
realize there
adjourn
was
afterwards, yeah.
Something, huh?
Then we'll adjourn afterwards, right?
Then we'll
Yeah,
adjourn
okay.
after. Yes.
So good night.
Carla, I gotta be.
Brooke, you going tomorrow?
Okay.
You going tomorrow or Saturday or? Huh?
Are you fighting?
Oh, see ya. Saturday.
Is this it?
No more paycheck for you.
I'll take tons of photos and I'll.
Gonna have that petite fillet.
Bye.
We'll do, yes.
To return.
Here you go. Here's
Laura, did you get those to return to close? Okay. So I just do the adjournment.
Thanks for coming again. I didn't know we were closed.
Yeah, we're going back to closed session.
Do you guys know how closed session works? Let's hear the topic, I guess.
Yeah, it will be very quick.
See you
but I
guys.
feel like there was something
Or I'll see you
that
later.
didn't say.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you again.
Just to adjourn. Good night.